Fire History presents Fire Facts with Chiefs Bill Lellis and Paul Smith. Today's episode:
Nozzle News.
If fires are to be controlled or extinguished, the department must pre-plan and be capable of skillful execution. Trained officers are essential. Modern equipment is necessary. But in most cases, the person who actually controls the fire is a key man, the nozzleman.
Well, good morning. This is retired Fire Chief Paul Smith with Marin Fire History. My guest today is Steve Bogel, retired from Sausalito, and we're going to bring you today our next edition of NOZZLE News. Last time, Bill Lellis, my co-host, and I talked about a number of fog nozzles, and Steve contacted us after the show and wanted to expand on the fog nozzles that we did on NOZZLE News. Now, last time, Bill talked about the Santa Rosa nozzle, and we have a couple of examples of that here. This is the 1.5-inch fog nozzle, and as Bill said on our last feature, it was able to spray a pattern of 180 degrees, while most fog nozzles maybe get you 90 degrees. And this is an example as well of the Santa Rosa nozzle, and this is the 2.5-inch version. So Steve, when we talked on the phone and set this little program up, you said you had some unique nozzles you'd like to share with us, so please.
Well, first of all, here's the German variety of the cam cone nozzle, straight stream, and then your 180 degree spread out of here.
Okay.
This here is another German fog nozzle.
Now, Steve, was this a handheld nozzle or was this something on a monitor?
This would have been a handheld.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the application for a nozzle like this?
Interior rooms. You remember in Europe and in Germany particularly, the buildings were all made out of concrete, other
Stone.
than the roofs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they had to survive multiple wars all the time, rebuild again, et cetera, et cetera. So, it mainly contents fires.
Okay.
So, here's a room that would have a spray pattern, which would cover the whole room.
Okay. And that was on a handheld hose line?
Yes.
Okay.
And all their hand lines were all Storts. And they advance the lines and connect them as they advance the lines. So a lot of volunteers are involved in the departments. So each one would bring up a roll of hose, snap it together, and they could very quickly
go another 100 feet.
Yeah, and one after another. In fact, they would assemble in front of the engine at the fire and get their orders, what they're going to do.
Okay.
And very military-like, and take it from there.
This is almost like here we do in California with progressive hose lays in wildland situations.
Yes.
Everybody has a couple 100 feet of hose on their pack, and you advance the line.
Correct.
Same theory.
Same purpose. Here, because you couldn't drag all that hose.
Right.
Okay.
Well, what do we have here? This looks interesting.
Well, this is a foam nozzle.
For foam, okay.
Okay, so your solution was here.
Okay.
Your handheld line was there.
Okay.
And then here would create the bubbles.
Okay, so your foam solution went in here, and it mixed it
going through
as a Venturi effect.
Exactly.
Huh.
Speaking of Venturis there, Paul, here's the Venturi that came to Sausalito Fire Department via Marin ship. So this came with our white engine that we got from Marin ship at the end of the war. So this would have been used if one of the holes started filling with water. So now you could drop this down on a rope, and you pressure line in and a larger line going out.
Okay, for the discharge.
For the discharge, so you could clear out the hole.
So you would pump 100 pounds, 150 pounds, whatever.
Yes.
From a 2.5-inch line into here.
Right.
And the Venturi effect would draw the water out of the...
Create a vacuum and pull it out.
Of the hole.
Yeah. So this is obviously upside down.
Sure. So this would work same as drafting
Yes.
out of a lake or pond or pool.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So, I mean, you can only draft it probably 20 feet at the
Right,
most.
right, right.
So this here, you could throw this over the bank down to a river if you wanted. Yeah.
And draw water out.
And draw water out.
Sure,
Okay.
that's interesting.
There was some other, this one here, big nozzle.
Yeah.
Actually, I got this at a salvage yard.
Okay,
And it was a motorized, and that's what fascinated me. On the Suffin I had in Sausalito, it was a radio-controlled nozzle.
okay, yeah.
And that was worked. Best time it was utilized was probably at the Dominican fire in Santa Fe,
Okay,
where you could stand off to the side and put the stream right where you wanted it. As you know, when you're on the tip, you can't see anything.
this is on an aerial apparatus.
That'd be for aerial, or it could be mounted on top of the engine.
Right, right, right.
Most likely, this was on top of an engine.
Okay,
It's so heavy.
so the radio control allowed the operator on the ground to control that nozzle 60 feet in the air without having to manually operate the tip.
That is correct. He could be off to the side.
Sure.
He could be on the roof next
Sure,
door.
sure.
He's put that water exactly where he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, during that fire, we handed the control to Chief Marcucci, and he directed it a few points. By the time we were called in there, the fire was actually, probably on a mop-up stage almost. It was just trying to burn into the remaining structure.
Yeah, I was on Kentfield's truck on that particular
Yeah.
operation, and I remember that it was over 100 degrees out that day as well.
Yeah.
It was a hot, hot day, and that was a tough fire. That was a real tough fire.
Our area was sitting behind the building in a depressed area, which became a big lake from all the water that was
Sure.
pumped. The exhaust system,
Sure.
all that was underwater. Okay, this device here, this was a Carlin hydrant valve.
Sure.
So, and I had the ones for the 5-inch hose also. This allowed the man to take the hydrant, and go, and the water would follow him. And at his convenience, he could make it up, and that would trip.
Trip the valve once
Yeah. Catch my fingers there.
that would trip
Yeah.
the valve in the open position
Yeah, right.
once the water had reached the end point, like say the pumper.
Once the pressure became greater on this side, because of the difference in the orifice size,
It
could
pops the
trip it.
valve.
Pops the valve. Okay, so anyway, this was a great device. And the other thing that we fooled with there, and I have a T-shirt that was created by Terry Horner. And this is the MPO nozzle system, which I think is the greatest nozzle system in the world, because now, for the first time, the nozzleman can control his nozzle.
Sure.
He can shut the pressure off, move his line,
Yep.
increase the pressure, all those things.
Yep.
But there was a flaw, not with the nozzle system, but with the way engines were built at that era. And that was when you threw the pump in the cab into pump position, the red light came on.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that was just wired about 2 feet of wire or less to the light, to the lever you moved.
Okay.
Since we had the problem in Sausalito, which engine ran across the street, took out the guy from factory rep. And San Jose also had, in the same situation, a runaway engine. Okay.
Okay.
After that, it was required to have the control switch at the lever on the pump body, so you know that it actually moved,
Right. Physically moved.
physically moved.
Now, what era was this, Steve?
This was early 70s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so,
It was probably 77.
so it's a electrical system switching a mechanical valve.
Well, it could
Electrical
be a whole
switch.
lot of ways. It could be air actuated,
Right,
anything.
right.
But the problem was it had to move
Into the
at
pump
the
gear.
pump body,
Right. Not on the road
lever,
gear.
not up above on the dash because you threw a lever.
Right.
And
That's interesting.
that was the problem there.
Well, and as we look at nozzle history, we went all the way from Nozzle News 1, where we talked about straight bore tips and how very simple they were and how
Yeah,
very cast they were, and then through the 1920s, when the naval nozzles were in the States, one of the first fog type nozzle or broken stream nozzles that we had here, all the way to the advanceable tip, multiple gallonage, Akron and task force tip stuff that we have today. And our last episode too, we covered, well, you know what? Some of our live lines are going back to the option of a straight bore tip as well. So with Steve here today, we talked about different systems for different nozzles for different applications, both in the States and over in Europe. So thanks, Steve, for your
just a couple comments there on the previous nozzle. You showed the Coast Guard nozzles, with the tips interchangeable. We had at Sausalito, the extensions that you could put it down in the hatchway, and one of them was curved, so you could put it around the corner, because you're talking about shipboard fires and those things, and they were designed for those purposes.
Now, in one of those nozzles we showed last time, had a different type of like a Stortz connection on it, something like that, and we do not have that aluminum piece that came out and turned the corner. But we surmise that's exactly what it was used for. The aluminum extension went on so you could get into the hidden areas or the holds of the ships.
Around corners.
Around corners and down into holds. Kind of like what the structural firefighters use as a cellar nozzle. Same thought. Go ahead.
My American of France. Pat Angle wrote an article in the IJ years ago, and it was titled "The Engine the Chief Loves and the Men All Hate."
The American, was that
American France?
Did you have a Ward LaFrance down there too?
No, American France.
And then, was that a gasoline-powered motor?
No, diesel.
Okay.
It was a tremendous engine. It had the biggest engine. It was a showpiece for the International Chiefs Conference in Chicago.
Okay.
That's where Chief Masson bought it at.
Okay, and about what year was that, Steve?
68.
All right.
So anyway, I cut my teeth on an engine and I liked it.
Anyway,
as it evolved, one time you set it up, I had the Carlin valve, and I demonstrated to Pat Angle how we could flow pretty near 3,000 gallons a minute, one-man operation. So I took her down to the Hillport. And there's a hot hydrant down there. I put the Carlin valve in. I put her way down at the other end of the road. Set the Carlin valve, got back in the engine. Drove down the road. The water was following me gently. Break the coupling, put it into the pump body, set up, trips the Carlin valve. I'm all ready to go. Open up, had dual stangs on that engine at this time.
That's right.
So one was a 2,000 gallon minute nozzle that was part of the space program, cooling the rockets, designed for that. And the other was a big tip.
And you had that on your
American LaFrance, which Santa Fe, Bob Marcucci, myself, and Cormadera, we took our old engines following the 1989 earthquake. And we cut these into hose tenders. And the water district paid for the hose. So we all had a mile of hose on these three engines. And then we had large floater pumps. So we could draft.
And you could move a lot of water.
We could move water because of the experience of the Oakland Hills fire following the earthquake in San Francisco. Everything, the lines were ruptured.
Well, you had a couple issues in Oakland Hills. You had a lot of fire. And we learned a lot there. That was 89. I think it was 91. And before that was the Loma Prieta earthquake. And that's when the San Francisco Fire Department drafted from the fireboats out in the Marina Green and pumped the water in their large diameter hose. And that's something that we learned here in Marin. Okay, if we've got a draft from a long ways away or our hydrant system is compromised, can we bring fire hose a mile long from a dependable water source? And that's where we got the thought for those hose tenders.
Which unfortunately they don't exist any longer, to my knowledge. So we have to wait for another earthquake, I guess. But I mean, I always think that the fire service should be prepared for all events. And these hose tenders are set up as a battery also, with the two stangs on it. It could be sacrificed if need be.
You could put a lot of water in that.
You can put a lot of water in it, and it fills a specific need. instead of having 3 of the same thing sitting there,
Right.
would you go to the mechanic that had the same tool set?
Right.
Or you have a variety of tools to take care of your problems.
Right.
And
Right.
that's why I looked at the fire service, anticipating and preparing for the various problems of your community.
Right. Right. Well, thanks, Steve. That was really interesting today. And, you know, we went through some nozzles I failed to mention, and we talked about this. We should have brought it up. We talked about the Santa Rosa nozzle, but we also have examples of the Cam Siren Company in Ross.
Yes.
They also built a handful of nozzles. Not for a long time. That was not their main focus, but they did have a foundry, and they did cast and build some firefighting nozzles right there in Ross. And we'll show that as part of this program.
That's the name Chemical, right?
That's it.